My spoiled brother called Mom a loser and went to live with Dad and Stepmother. But after learning about my mother's will, he quickly returned and claimed that I didn't belong here. But what Mom did next left everyone completely shocked. I'll never forget the moment Charles called Mom a loser. It wasn't just the word, it was the way he said it, like he really believed it. Like he had been holding it in for months and finally decided to throw it in her face. You've wasted your whole life, and I'm not going to end up like you. The room fell silent. I was sitting on the couch, halfway through scrolling my phone, and froze in mid-swipe. Mom, sitting in her usual chair by the window, just stared at him.
For a second, I thought she was going to say something to defend herself, yell, anything.
But she didn't. She just sat there, shoulders slumped, like someone had sucked the air out of her. Charles didn't stop there. Look at Eliana, he said, his voice rising. She's younger than you, but she's got her life together. A big house, a real job, vacations, all the things you'll never have. I wanted to say something, but my throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed sand. Mom wasn't perfect, sure. She was 57 and worked long hours driving a van just to pay the bills. She wasn't rich like Eliana, but she wasn't a failure either. She'd raised us after Dad left, and she'd done the best she could. That had to count for something, didn't it? Charles obviously didn't think so. He turned and stormed upstairs, muttering that he wasn't staying in this miserable house anymore. Mom didn't move. She just stared at the floor, as if looking at me or saying anything would completely break her. I stayed quiet too, not knowing what to do. When Charles came back downstairs, he had a duffel bag in one hand and his cell phone in the other. I'm moving in with Dad and Eliana, he announced. At least they know how to live. You should have tried harder, Mom. You could have been somebody. Then he walked out the door, the sound of the screen slamming behind him echoing through the house. Mom didn't try to stop him. She didn't say a word. I sat there for a long time, waiting for her to say something, but she didn't. Finally I asked, "Are you all right?" She shook her head slowly. "He'll regret this one day," she said quietly, "when he realizes what really matters." I wasn't so sure. Charles had a way of always landing on his feet. He made his choices and never looked back. Eliana's house had everything he wanted: space, luxury, and the lifestyle he felt he deserved. It never mattered to him that it wasn't built on anything real. But Mom? She stayed up late that night, sitting in her chair by the window in the dark. I think she thought I had gone to bed, but I hadn't. I stood in the hall and watched her sitting there. Maybe she was waiting for Charles to return. Or maybe she was just trying to figure out what had gone so wrong. What we didn't know then was that Charles wasn't done with us. Far from it. Charles didn't call for weeks after he left. He did, however, post pictures. On Instagram, of course. Him and Dad lounging by the pool, champagne glasses in hand. A picture of Eliana's Tesla with the caption, "Manifesting my future." And a picture of his new room in their house, twice the size of mine, with its own bathroom. He looked thrilled. I tried not to let it bother me, but it did. Meanwhile, Mom wasn't doing so well. She was quiet most of the time, and she looked tired, a different kind of tired than I'd seen before. She started coughing a lot and complaining about how much her back hurt after long shifts. I told her she should see a doctor, but she brushed it off, saying it was just from sitting too much. One night, out of the blue, she said, "I need to talk to you about something important." I was sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework, and I looked up. She was holding a folder. "I've been thinking," she went on. "I'm not getting any younger. If something happens to me, I don't want you to have to worry about anything." "What do you mean, something happens?" I asked. She waved her hand like it wasn't a big deal. "Just being realistic. Anyway, I'm writing my will. I don't have much, but what I do have, I wanted to go to you." I blinked, not sure how to answer. "Okay," I said slowly. "But what about Charles?" She sighed and sat across from me. "Charles has made his choice," she said. "He doesn't care about this family. He doesn't even call to check in. If he doesn't care about me now, why would he care when I'm gone?" I didn't know what to say, but I didn't argue. I knew Charles had burned his bridge with her, even if he didn't realize it yet. A week later, she told Dad about the will. I'm not sure why. Maybe she thought he had a right to know since they'd been married for so long. Maybe she thought he'd tell Charles. It didn't take long for Charles to find out. I came home from school one day to find him sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. He had his duffel bag with him again, unzipped and spilling clothes all over the floor. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He smiled at me as if he hadn't left us a month ago. "Mom and I talked," he said. "I'm moving back in." That was news to me. I stared at him, trying to process what had just happened. "Why now?" I asked, not bothering to hide the suspicion in my voice. He shrugged. "I just realized I should be here for her, you know. We're family. And besides," he paused, lowering his voice as if telling me a secret, "you know about the will, right?" There it was. He leaned forward, grinning. I mean, it's just smart. Why shouldn't I get my share? I'm the oldest, after all. It's only fair. I didn't say anything. He thought I was on his side, but I wasn't. I wasn't supporting his little scheme, and I wasn't going to let him use Mom like that. Later that night, I told Mom everything he'd said. Her face darkened. She didn't say much, but I could tell she was angry. He'll stay 5 days, tops, she said. What I didn't know was just how ugly those 5 days would be. From the moment Charles moved back in, the house felt under siege. He didn't try to be subtle about his intentions. He acted as if his mere presence was a favor to Mom, as if he were a selfless son swooping in to help, even though everyone knew why he was really there. He spent the first day redecorating the guest room, his old room, before he decided Eliana's mansion was better. He brought over new throw pillows, a vanity, and some expensive candles that he bragged were gifts from Dad. It was all for show. I didn't say anything, but I could see that Mom's patience was wearing thin. By the second day, he was playing the role of the perfect son. He cooked dinner, well, heated up something from the deli, and made a big deal about setting the table. During the meal, he gushed about how he wanted us to reconnect as a family. This is important to me, he said, smiling sweetly. I want to be there for you, Mom. And for you, too, of course, he added, looking at me. Mom didn't buy it for a second. She didn't even look at him while he spoke, just focused on her food as if he wasn't there. On the third day, Charles began to test boundaries. He made references to family priorities and fairness. He casually mentioned that the oldest child usually inherits the most because it's tradition. Don't you think that's true, Mom? He asked during dinner. Mom put down her fork and finally looked at him. What I think, she said, is that you shouldn't count on something that isn't yours. The room fell silent. Charles smiled awkwardly and didn't go any further, but I knew he was seething. By the fourth day, he was getting restless. He clearly expected his little charm offensive to work by now, but it wasn't. That's when the fighting started. It started with little comments, sarcastic jabs about how tight Mom was with money or how I was Mom's favorite. But then it escalated. He started snapping at her, accusing her of being unfair, of not appreciating his efforts, and even of punishing him for living with Dad. I'm your son too, he yelled that night after dinner. Why can't you treat me like one? Mom got up from the table and looked at him, calm but icy. You're not acting like my son, she said. You act like someone who's just here to take. You don't care about me and you never have. So don't pretend you're here out of love. We both know better. Charles stormed upstairs, slamming the door so hard it shook the house. I stayed where I was, awkwardly picking at my food. Are you okay? I finally asked. Mom sighed. He's leaving tomorrow, she said. I'm done with his games. The next morning, Charles came down, looking angry but determined. He grabbed his bag and muttered to himself, this family doesn't appreciate anything. Before he walked out the door, he turned to Mom and snapped, you're still a loser. Nothing's changed. Mom didn't even flinch. Go back to your father, she said calmly. That's where you belong. And then he was gone. For a moment I felt relieved, but part of me wondered if it was really over. It wasn't. After Charles left, the house felt quieter, but not in a good way. It was like the air had been sucked out of the place. Mom tried to move on, but I could tell the whole thing had affected her more than she wanted to admit. She spent most of her time at work while sitting in her chair by the window, staring out. I thought Charles was gone for good this time. He hadn't called or texted, which wasn't surprising, but it still felt strange. Charles was never the type to let things go quietly. Then, about a week later, the phone rang. It was Dad. I answered, and he wasted no time getting to the point. I heard from Charles, he said. What's going on over there? I almost laughed. What's going on? He called Mom a loser again and left. What else is new? Dad sighed dramatically, as if that was somehow my problem. You know, your mother could try to understand him. He's under a lot of pressure. Pressure? Charles's life at Eliana seemed more like a vacation than a hardship. But I didn't feel like arguing, so I just said, if he's so upset, why doesn't he call her himself? He says he's tired of trying, Dad replied. He doesn't think she'll ever forgive him. Maybe because he's not sorry? I snapped. Dad paused for a moment then said, look, I just wanted to warn you. He's talking about the will. That stopped me cold. What about it? He thinks your mother is being unfair. He says it's his right to have a share, and he wants to talk to her about it again. He's determined. I hung up, feeling uneasy. Charles had always been stubborn, but this felt different. It wasn't just about Mom or their relationship anymore, it was about what he thought he was entitled to. 2 days later, he showed up again. No warning this time. He just walked in as if he still lived there. Miss me? He asked, grinning as if nothing had happened. I didn't even try to hide my annoyance. What are you doing here? I need to talk to Mom, he said, brushing past me. And don't worry, I'm not staying. He found Mom in the living room, sitting in her chair with the TV on low. He didn't waste any time. Mom, we need to talk about the will, he said. She looked up at him, her expression blank. There's nothing to talk about, she said. Of course there is, he said, sitting down across from her. I am your eldest son. I deserve a share of whatever is left. It's not fair to cut me out completely. Mom didn't answer right away. She just stared at him, as if trying to decide if he was worth the energy at all. Finally she said, fair? Do you even know what that word means? Charles started to protest, but she cut him off. You walked out on this family, Charles. You walked out and called me a loser because I couldn't give you what Eliana could. And now you want me to believe that you care about fairness? About me? He opened his mouth to argue, but Mom wasn't finished. You're not here because you love me. You're here because you think you can get something out of me. But I'm telling you right now, Charles, you won't. The room fell silent. Charles looked stunned for a moment, but then his expression hardened. Fine, he said. If that's the way you feel, don't expect me to come crawling back when you need me. I won't, Mom said. He grabbed his bag and stormed out without another word. That night I asked Mom if she was okay. I've made my decision, she said firmly. Everything I have is going to you. Charles made his decision a long time ago. Now he has to live with it. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to think about the will, about losing Mom one day. I just hoped she'd be okay for a long time. But deep down, I knew Charles wouldn't let it go. He never did. Life started to feel normal again after Charles stormed out. Or at least as normal as it could feel in our house. I went back to school, Mom went back to work, and we didn't talk about Charles or the will. It was like an unspoken agreement between us, the less we thought about it, the better. Then, about 2 weeks later, something completely unexpected happened. It was a Friday night, and I was upstairs in my room, scrolling through my phone, when I heard the doorbell ring. I didn't think much of it at first, probably just a package or maybe one of Mom's friends dropping by. But then I heard voices downstairs, and something about the sound made me stop. I couldn't make out what was being said, but I knew something was wrong. I crept halfway down the stairs and stopped. Mom was standing by the front door, and next to her was a woman I didn't recognize. She was tall, maybe mid-40s, with a sharp suit and an even sharper expression. She had a briefcase in one hand and a business card in the other. I'm here on behalf of Eliana Williams, the woman said, her voice soft but cold. I felt my stomach drop. Why would Eliana, Dad's perfect, gym-owning wife, send someone to our house? Mom took the card, but didn't look at it. What does she want? She asked, her voice deep and measured. The woman adjusted her tie, looking far too comfortable in our tiny, cluttered living room. Ms. Williams thinks there's been a misunderstanding, she said. She's concerned about your estate and how it's being handled. She feels it's in the best interest of your sons to make sure everything is distributed fairly. I almost laughed out loud. Equitably? That was rich, coming from a woman who had more money than she could ever spend. Mom didn't laugh. She stared at the woman for a long moment before finally saying, You tell Eliana she's got no say in what happens to my estate. The woman didn't flinch. Ms. Williams isn't trying to interfere. She just wants to make sure Charles isn't unfairly excluded. He's your eldest, after all. Mom's jaw tightened. Charles doesn't care about me or this family, she said. He's made that clear, and Eliana doesn't get to send a lawyer to my house to tell me how to run my own business. The woman's smile didn't falter, but there was something dangerous behind it. I'm not an attorney, Miss Carter, she said. I'm an advisor, and my advice is to reconsider. It would be a shame if this became a legal matter. At that, I came the rest of the way down the stairs. A legal issue? I said as I entered the room. Are you threatening her? The woman turned to me, her smile tightening. Not at all, she said, just pointing out the potential complications of leaving a son out of the will. Get out, Mom said suddenly, her voice like steel. Now. The woman hesitated a moment then nodded. Very well. But I hope you'll reconsider. She turned and walked out the door, leaving Mom standing there with the business card still in her hand. After she was gone, I asked, what the hell was that all about? Mom shook her head. Eliana thinks she can push me around, she said. She's wrong. I didn't know what to think. Charles was one thing, but now Eliana was getting involved in hiring someone to come to our house. It was like they were trying to scare Mom into changing her mind. But Mom wasn't scared. If anything, she looked more determined than ever. This isn't over, she said, almost to herself. She was right. It wasn't. After Eliana's consultant showed up at our door, things escalated quickly. I thought Mom would let it go, she wasn't usually one to stir the pot, but this time something changed. She didn't say much to me that night, just told me to focus on school and let her handle it. The next morning she started calling. I had no idea who she was talking to, but it was clear she was serious. I picked up snippets of conversation, legal terms, names I didn't recognize, and phrases like "put an end to this nonsense." Mom was calm, but there was an edge to her voice I hadn't heard before. Later that week she called me into the living room and said, "It's done." "What's done?" I asked. "Eliana, Charles, everything," she said. "They won't bother us anymore." She explained that she'd gotten in touch with some of her old contacts, people she'd worked with when she had a more high-profile job. Apparently, Mom had a few cards up her sleeve that she hadn't bothered to use until now. She talked to a high-powered lawyer and drafted a letter to Eliana and Dad, making it crystal clear that if they continued to interfere, she would take legal action for harassment. And let's just say, Mom added with a small grin, Eliana doesn't want that kind of attention. Within days, the calls and texts stopped altogether. Charles never showed up at our door again, and neither did any of Eliana's goons. For the first time in months, it felt like we could breathe again. But Mom wasn't done. She was revising her will to make sure there would be no loopholes or surprises. Everything was locked up tight, with clear instructions that everything would go to me. She even wrote a letter to be included with the will, explaining exactly why Charles wasn't included. He made his choice, she said, and now he has to live with it. Charles, Dad, and Eliana disappeared from our lives after that. We didn't hear from them, and we didn't reach out to them. It was like a clean break, and honestly, it was for the best. They had their perfect little lives and we had ours. Life moved on. Mom and I settled into a peaceful routine, and for the first time in a long time, things felt normal. Then, a little over a year ago, something unexpected happened, this time in a good way. I met Lily. We'd known each other in high school, but ran into each other again at a coffee shop. She was sweet, kind, and genuinely interested in me. When things got serious, I introduced her to Mom, half expecting her to be skeptical. But to my surprise, Mom liked her right away. A few months later, when Lily was looking for a new place to live, Mom suggested that she move in with us. "Why not?" she said. "She's a good kid, and the house is big enough." Lily moved in, and it was the best decision we ever made. She's been such a big help, not just to me, but to Mom. She helps around the house, runs errands, and even watches sports with Mom on Sundays. Mom seems happier now. She's still not in the best of health, but she's doing better. And for the first time in years, I feel like we're a real family again. As for Charles, I have no idea what he's up to, and I don't want to know. He made his choice, and so did we. Life isn't perfect, but it's ours. And that's more than enough. Make sure to like and subscribe.